Hello everyone and welcome to this ServiceMax and Software AG webinar, a blueprint for the future of field service. I'm Aaron, your webinar host, and your presenters are Sean Riley of Software AG and Mickey Collart of ServiceMax. To introduce our speakers is Kristen Coyne, the Software AG Director of Field Marketing for North America. Kristen, over to you.
Thank you, Aaron, for that introduction, and welcome everyone. As Aaron mentioned, today we will be hearing from two industry thought leaders who both possess deep experience in driving field service success. It is my pleasure to introduce and tell you a little bit about each of them. First, we have Mickey Collart, Product Marketing Manager at ServiceMax. Mickey joined ServiceMax in 2013 as Product Marketing Manager, supporting both the global services and alliances and the customer success teams. She is responsible for the positioning and messaging for services and customer marketing activities, as well as driving awareness and demand for value-added products and services through both internal and partner channels at ServiceMax. Also joining us today is Sean Riley from Software AG. Sean is Global Industry Director of Manufacturing and Transportation at Software AG. He brings over 10 years of experience in the supply chain and logistics field. He has received an MBA with distinction from DePaul University and is a certified Six Sigma Green Belt. Sean has also been named a Supply and Demand Chain Executive Pro to Know for the 4th consecutive year in a row. So welcome speakers in today's audience. I will now turn the event over to Mickey Collart from ServiceMax. Mickey, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. We're going to start out our webinar today with a quick poll. We want to take the pulse of our audience. So Erin, can you go ahead and bring up that poll for us so we can go ahead and find out where our audience is today in terms of what they're trying to do with their field service organizations. So as we all look down the list today, we want to understand if you're trying to identify and calculate field service metrics that drive improvement, or if you're more likely trying to increase first-time call fix rates, if you wanted to incorporate IoT to enable predictive maintenance, or leverage condition monitoring or dynamic prediction to improve those service outcomes that you're delivering today, or if you wanted to implement kind of an outcome-based or bundled services agreement. Great. So it looks like we've got some good results that just come in. So it looks like a good percentage of you out there are looking to identify and calculate those field service metrics that are really going to drive improvements. And one of those things, of course, is increasing that first call fix rate and first time fix rate. So we'll definitely dive into a bunch of that as we move through this blueprint for the future of field service. So I'm going to start out our webinar today with saying something that's not necessarily profound, but that we all feel it from day to day, and that is field service is complex. And we try to bring some organization to this complexity by taking a look at field service and the entire delivery chain through a few lenses. First, there's the people. These are the people at the heart of your field service organizations, field technicians, dispatchers. They have all of the schedules that you need, the locations, the skills, even some third-party technicians out there that are sort of the face of your field service organization. And then we have the processes. And of course, these are all the processes that these people manage from day to day. They have to manage work orders, checklists, all the returns coming back from the customer. And the next is the promises. The promises, of course, bring together all of these things, the people and the processes, to form that commitment between you and your customer. These are the things like service contracts and warranties and the things that you're providing to your customers out there. And then, of course, there's products. And this really gives us a good feeling for how big our service business really is. If you're keeping track of your install base, you understand the opportunities that are out there for you to deliver more efficient and effective service. So together we call this is the heart of field service, essentially. And the heart of field service is beating very fast. There's a lot of changing expectations out there. And with the progression of technology, as you see here, we're coming up against 14 billion connected devices out there, according to Cisco. And it's just getting more complex. We're just starting to see the possibilities of connected devices in field service. And this is really leading to some new customer requirements. Customers today really want to see the proof of performance. They know that there are machines out there that can alert them to failures, and they're not looking to be the first ones to give you a call anymore. They're not looking for that break-fix service anymore. They really want you to sell them the outcomes that they need. So for instance, if you're a manufacturer, if you're selling manufacturing equipment, they want to pay for uptime of the equipment that you sell them. And these demands are going to need different responses. You'll have to drive towards more consistent service more often. You'll have to understand new ways in which equipment can need the maintenance and the inspection, and automated ways to analyze all the data coming from these machines to derive insights about their health. And then, of course, you're going to need to back all of that up with your service delivery, with the consistency and the efficiency that they're already expecting. So essentially, you're going to need to compete on something different to close these gaps with your customer. And what we're talking about today is really streamlining for the efficiencies that you're going to need. So it starts off with the processes and then measuring those processes through field service metrics so that you can, at the end of the day, transition into new types of promises for your customers. Now, we're not saying that right off the bat you'll be able to promise that equipment's always going to be working, but you can take those incremental steps to start those measurements, adjust your processes, and then come to understand what it is that you can go ahead and develop for your customers as in the ways of new services and new agreements. And we're really already starting to see this happen today. With the initial wave of technology, it really brought us the visibility that we needed out in the field. So with mobility, we've been able to give field technicians unprecedented capabilities. We give them everything that they need to resolve customer issues fast. But today, we'd like to introduce the idea of being able to take advantage of IoT technologies so we can see a future where the streaming machine data will be collected, analyzed, and then possibly even trigger automated alerts and actions for immediate responses to critical events, that downed equipment or faulty equipment. So it's the impact of all of this that we're looking to talk to you about today, how to get that start with IoT technologies, how to get a start with predictive analytics, and how to really get that feedback loop going so that you have success with these new technologies. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and bring up the second poll question. Erin, could you bring that up for us? We really like to figure out kind of what your bigger challenges are in field service today as we start to talk about some of the technical details. So as you see them here, are you really struggling with providing consistent service or maybe differentiating your service contracts from your competitors? Are you looking to enforce process rigor or connecting your field technicians to that knowledge base that they really need while they're out there in the field? And maybe you're even thinking about creating a predictive maintenance program. So we really like to hear from you. You can click on one or all and let us know what your field service challenges are today. Looks like we've got a couple of winners here in terms of what you're trying to do, but the majority of you are looking to create that predictive maintenance program, and I think we've got a lot of great information for you. With that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Sean to take you through the technology.
Thanks, Mickey. As Mickey said, my name is Sean Riley, and we're going to talk through a brief blueprint on how to incorporate IoT technology to really create that wonderful predictive maintenance program, how to go about to do it, and what are some of the cares, concerns that we should really focus on when building out a program. The first and most obvious issue is device connectivity. So how do I integrate thousands, perhaps millions of devices into my network and be able to simply begin getting data from them? And while that sounds like it might be a fairly straightforward task, some key considerations that we found that most people want to think about is number one, how can I flexibly support multiple gateways? Simply because in a field service operation, we found typically that there isn't a one-size-fits-all from a sensor type that's needed. That there's going to be diverse sets of equipment, diverse types of sensors that are on that equipment that might require multiple different types of gateways that are the entry point for that device data. Secondly, how often and what's the cost of accessing the network that data is going to be transmitted over to me? So maybe it's a over-the-air cellular network and you're paying for that data to be transmitted to you. Maybe it's your customer's wireless network and maybe they only let you leverage that network several times a day as opposed to continuously streaming data across that network. And then lastly, how do I focus on consistent message delivery along with having a very low latency type of delivery so that message doesn't take a long time to get to me, and the data transmission is scalable, meaning I don't have any choke points in terms of the amounts of events per second that are being transitioned to me, simply because I want to scale my program. I want to ensure that I'm able to increase the amount of service that I'm able to provide, and I'm not bound by the ability for a messaging layer to deliver those critical pieces of information to me for analysis. Which leads us to, secondly, how do I understand what's happening? And there are a couple key aspects to understanding what's happening right now and in the near future with the equipment that's under charge. And that is, number one, understanding patterns that are consistent or patterns that are new from either a normal runtime, from a degradation standpoint, but being able to identify what patterns are beneficial to you and how they're changing. And then secondly, looking at how can I mash multiple events together to create better outcomes. So for example, if I'm monitoring multiple sensors on a compressor, for example, and I'm looking at pressure and fluid viscosity and fluid level and temperature and revolutions per minute, as well as vibration, I want to understand the meaning of each one of those metrics on their own, but I also want to be able to understand from a condition standpoint, what does it mean when one of those might fail? So for example, if vibration immediately drops to zero, it might be a strong indicator that a bearing has bored through the casing. But if you're looking at this from an overall pattern perspective and looking at it being an analytic engine looking at it, you're able to understand that the bearing didn't bore through the casing, that specifically because all the other metrics are running without issue, that it's just a simple sensor failure. We don't have to dispatch a tech right away. We can replace the sensor on the next call. And that's where we're really cautious of, again, being able to analyze both those single events, but also understand how do I analyze those events amongst each other to create a better outcome. So along with condition analysis, I'm able to take what's happening with my equipment and begin predicting the future. I'm able to begin aggregating data amongst a set time period and dynamically feeding it into a predictive model. So again, I can see the future. And two of the considerations that we found to be extraordinarily important at this step when looking at moving towards a predictive model in nature is, number one, understanding the difference and your need for the difference between a standard and non-standard predictive model. Standard predictive models are easy. They're able to be leveraged. They're not typically customized, and you can get moving quickly with them. However, they also have somewhere between a 1 and 15% inaccuracy level, depending on the environment that they're in. And that can sometimes cause technicians, it can sometimes cause other field service professionals to not trust the data because it can result in false positives, as opposed to a non-standard model, which is customized, which is typically created by a data scientist, but is extraordinarily accurate. And that allows for that trust to be built in the system. But the final consideration is, with that accuracy, there is a little bit of maintenance that has to be done to that model on an ongoing basis, where as patterns change, the model needs to be updated and changed as well. So I just wanted to take a minute to give a quick visualization of the different types of analytics and how they work with each other. And what we're looking at is real data from an engine failure. So we have multiple different data feeds. I think it's 18 or 20 in total that we're looking at. And visually, it's pretty easy to identify when the failure is going to occur simply by looking at the runtime chart. From a condition monitoring perspective, you have extra time, typically days to weeks worth of time, to notify your service technician that there's going to be a failure. Let's go out there and resolve the issue on a predictive basis. However, that might not be enough time to fully optimize your predictive maintenance program. And that's where, when you're combining condition monitoring with prediction, it gives you a much higher amount of time to be able to take action. Additionally, one of the key considerations that you want to look at when implementing this type of a program is, how can I provide additional data to the technician? How can I provide additional data inside my organization about what's going to occur, so that we can show up with the right skills, the right service parts components, and the right tools to do the job at the right time that's most convenient for my customer. And we can only do that by providing a large amount of contextual data about what's happening and what will happen in the future. So what this does is, number one, it allows the organization to understand what needs to be done and act accordingly. It also allows for the monitoring of the process that needs to be completed much earlier. Meaning, if we need to escalate this particular issue from let's work it in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks during a planned maintenance period, to we need to either resolve this sooner than predicted, or we weren't able to work it in during the nominal planned downtime period, and now we need to schedule an unplanned period before there's a break-fix type of a situation occurring. We have the time to do that and act upon that. So those are 3 basic measures of moving to predictive analytics. But in all, there are 5 different types of analytics in terms of how I can apply them to my field service organization, and how can I leverage all of them in a predictive maintenance type of solution, because they're not mutually exclusive. It's not as if you can only use one type of analytics and you're locked in, whereas as you move from a descriptive type of analytics, from a what happened, how can I make sure that maybe the next time I don't have that outcome occur, or make sure I want that outcome to occur, to how can I predict what's going to happen and make something happen based on what I want to have to occur, to ensure that the metrics that I'm tracking against are as good as possible. And that can be a daunting task for many organizations. So we've put together a methodology on how to go about doing this to ensure you're really able to act as effectively as possible with all the analytics that are available to you today. The first is I want to define what my strategy is for the future based on data, what I've done in the past, how do I design what I want to do. Secondly, I want to understand where I can improve. And that focuses on understanding the processes that I've executed, understanding the effectiveness of those processes, and understanding from a Six Sigma project perspective, how can I refine those processes and then begin monitoring how I'm executing those processes continually. So I can continue to refine based on my root cause analysis and the other fun Six Sigma type of process control analytics that are used by the black belts in most organizations. While that is moving to control, we really want to focus on what can I do in real time to move from a higher level, I'm putting this in as part of my strategy, it's part of what I do every day, to how can I really ensure that I am acting in real time to reinforce my strategy. And that's where we look at beginning to automate processes, have constructive case management tools, and a constructive case management tool is a field service application. A field service application that has a high amount of process rigor to it that ensures that the field service techs are following the proper repair guidelines and fixing those issues in real time. And now here's where we want to move to something that becomes really unique. I want to begin looking at my analysis in real time with vast amounts of data. And I want to begin culling out that vast amount of data to understand what's going to happen in the future. And because I'm able to do that, I'm able to look at, again, weeks to months out, depending on whether I'm doing condition monitoring or condition monitoring with prediction, to begin building that long-term focus. And then most importantly, and this is the part that is extraordinarily critical for a field service operative, how can I make what I want to have happen based on what will happen? And that involves understanding, again, closing the loop from I know what my strategy is, I know what my plan is, I want to begin executing and evolving my strategy based upon my executional capabilities, and I want to ensure that I'm able to completely automate the actions that I want to take, as well as ensure that I'm accomplishing my goals in real time. And that, again, goes back to understanding the metrics that are critical for the success of your field service operation, as well as those metrics that are critical to driving differentiated services. So when I'm taking those automated actions, when I'm perhaps taking manual actions, I want to understand a few quick items here. Number one, I want to be able to see what's happening throughout the organization and disseminate information from a single source of truth, so that I'm not spending time looking at reports, 3, 4, 5 different reports, and arguing which business analyst ran the correct report. I also want to be able to understand quickly and easily what's happening in real time, so that I don't have to ask my tech what's going on, call my call center, ask what's going on, allow them to do their jobs and deliver excellent field service. And then, again, understand from a strategic perspective, how are my processes executed and how did they focus and how did they support my key metrics? In parallel to that, I want to begin automating my actions, as we talked about, from a prescriptive analytics perspective, because I want to drive outcomes. I just don't want to know what to do or what I have to do. I want that outcome to be created and to be completed for me based on what my overall business strategy is that differentiates my field service operations from everyone else's. And the question that we get most of the time is specifically, what types of processes can I automate? What types of business rules can I put into place to ensure that my field service operation is not only highly effective for my customers, but it's also highly efficient for me to ensure I'm able to provide the best field service at the best possible internal cost. And we've come up with 4 specific actions that we've found are most common to driving the most efficient field service program. The first is the ability to send electronic instructions back to a piece of equipment for self-calibration. Now, not all pieces of equipment can accept these types of instructions, but the newer pieces of equipment, especially the advanced automation and advanced robotics that have been coming out over the last several years, do allow for this type of self-calibration to occur. And one of the keys to this type of automated action is being able to understand the effectiveness of this type of action and being able to report if the action wasn't effective to the field tech that, hey, this was the calibration that was already done automatically. Therefore, your next action is XYZ based on the results that came from that calibration. Secondly, I want to automatically order spare parts and service components because I don't want to keep a high amount of inventory sitting around in my back shelf, eating up valuable networking capital that could be used fueling business growth. And I'm able to do that because, again, I have a predictive program in place. So even if a component takes 3 weeks to get to me from a supplier, if I have 4 weeks worth of lead time, I'm able to understand with a high degree of confidence that this particular issue is going to predictively occur. I can automate the ordering of that particular component. And the reason why that's critical is it ensures that my internal human resources aren't overburdened, or they just forgot to place the order for it, or the person that usually does that is out on vacation for a week, and when they come back, they find out, oh, wait a minute, now we have a problem because I won't be able to perform this particular order or this particular service because I wasn't able to get this order to my supplier in time. The last 2 issues focus on automatically dispatching the technician, so ensuring that your tech is notified through your field service app of when they're needed, what they're needed to do, so they can schedule appropriately well in advance in an efficient manner, and escalate any issues automatically based on what the equipment is telling you or based on the ability for that technician to get out there during a planned downtime period. And it's that automatic escalation that gets very critical to ensuring there's a high amount of rigor to your field service process and ensuring that if you're moving to an outcome-based or bundled services and product-based type of a program, that nothing falls through the cracks and it's not your margin that ends up taking a hit by moving towards that type of a program. While we've talked about the blueprint, while we talked about all the wonderful different types of analytics and actions that can be taken, the key to success, and we've mentioned this once or twice before already, is understanding the effectiveness of these particular actions. And you can only do that with a rigorous process that's tied to metrics that will absolutely drive positive outcomes for your field service program. And Mickey's going to walk through what those specific metrics are, or the most popular metrics, and the benefits of those most popular metrics to your organization.
Right. Thanks so much, Sean. It just amazes me every single time I hear about this, all the possibilities that are associated with these new technologies. It's just amazing. And as Sean said, understanding the effectiveness of your service delivery today, it's not as simple as just basic measurements. You have to actually manage, and it's difficult to get that feedback loop that's absolutely necessary when you decide to adopt some of these new technologies. So measuring field service performance is difficult. First you need to be able to track the right KPIs, and you need to be able to track them accurately. So it really is dependent upon the systems that you're using and how easily you can get information in and out of these types of systems. As well, you need to be able to tie these metrics to your overall business processes. So if you take, for instance, your first-time fix rate, this is like a core metric that impacts service costs and customer satisfaction. How is it that you handle any follow-up work orders in your organization? How do you create new work orders based off of things that weren't complete? And how do you correlate those two things? It's going to differ between divisions. It's going to differ sometimes between technician teams. And at the end of the day, when that happens, it's really difficult to try and get those apples-to-apples comparisons across your organization. So you really do have to spend some time figuring out how you're going to compare metrics dependent on different processes and how you're going to aggregate the data and at what levels. And then, of course, you want to be able to use this information quickly. It has to be at your fingertips so that you can accurately measure and change the processes as needed. So it's not an easy task, but we think there are quite a few service performance metrics out there that you can leverage and start measuring today. And we've come up with at least 4 that we think will give you a leg up in preparing for the future of field service. But before we do go on to take a look at these all in turn, I'd like to go ahead and bring up another poll for the audience because I wanted to find out how many of these items that you're actually measuring today. The contract uptime, first time fix, mean time to repair, and average response time. We'll give you a minute to go ahead and respond, and then we'll get the results. Looks like we've got some good results. So it looks like most everybody, a lot of people are measuring average response times. This is fantastic. There's some interesting aspects of this one that we'll go through, but it looks like there's a fair amount of people that are measuring everything. We're going to go ahead and start out with taking a look at contract uptime because, quite honestly, this is a metric that's going to get obviously so much more accurate when it can be tracked from the source of failure, actually the machine itself. And if you're not already tracking it today, it will be one of those must-have metrics when you start to connect your customers' assets for monitoring. But really, no matter how it's tracked, it really does provide the ultimate proof of performance to service levels. So it's really, really important. We feel like it's one of those gateway measurements to outcome-based service. And the better that you're going to get at measuring and managing to it, the closer that you're going to be to understanding, the kinds of promises that you're going to be able to make to your customers when they purchase a new contract. You can see some ways here that you might improve contract uptime. Obviously, turning over that data to your development group as a part of a continuous feedback loop to them for quality and for serviceability of those products is a good one. But the impacts, of course, are immense, and they really do impact customer satisfaction and increase your margins overall because essentially they're really saving you a lot of costs at the end of the day. And the next is one of the staples of field service management. First-time fix is a percentage of the customer's problems that are resolved on the first-time visit. It's a great feedback for how effective your service organization is. Do your techs show up on site with everything they need? Do they have the right parts? Do they have the right skills? Do they have the right certifications? When you start to dig into first-time fix rate and really manage to it, you're working out those operational kinks in your processes. You're getting your staff trained on proactive measures. So for instance, if you're taking care of greater visibility into spare parts or trunk stock, this would really lead to more efforts that start you to predict sort of the useful life of those parts. If you're getting better at sending the right people to each job, that builds on dispatchers' capabilities to triage and troubleshoot. And of course, this will be used very heavily when you're trying to determine which machine alerts are more important, how to match the problem data coming with the right sets of resources. There's going to be a bit of transition time associated to all of this. So really, when you go in to improve those first-time fix rates, you're going to have huge impacts on margins and customer satisfaction. You're going to be eliminating the second truck rolls, which can be really costly, and obviously fixing things and being more productive while you're there on site. And the next we have is mean time to repair. So this is obviously the average time it takes you to repair an item on site. And it's really one of those metrics that you're looking to measure so that you're ensuring each of your techs or engineers are well trained and that they're efficient on the job. And it can be measured, not only by technician, but if you measure it by product, it sort of takes on a different flavor of performance. It helps the service teams really understand which products under contract take up more engineering time than others. And it really does inform that contract coverage, and it helps field service organizations scope the outcomes that they want to be promising their customers for each product or product family. So if you're measuring it now, you're getting that solid foundation of feedback on which engineers perform the best on different types of equipment and who's the best source of guidance for the rest of your team. So driving towards that expertise now is going to really pay off tenfold when you've got a lot of products that are monitored all at once and those alerts really start to multiply. So this is a really good one to dig into. And of course, this impacts productivity at the customer site, getting those technicians trained, well-trained and efficient, and improves customer satisfaction. And then the last one, you guys tended to measure this the most, the average response time. And while this can be measured according to all different types of service levels that you have, it's not just the response time, but your time to restoration of an issue, your time to resolution of that issue. And you'd think that in the new world of connected devices, that response time might not be that important anymore. But today, if you're really not measuring it, you're probably missing out on one of the key indicators for customer satisfaction. And no doubt that customer satisfaction will be one of the basis for any new investments in technologies. No doubt. The average response time really also helps you keep track of where your engineers are so you can schedule them effectively. It's one of those fundamental measures that when you use it alongside with mean time to repair, it really allows you to get very efficient with the people that you have today. So it is really important as you move on in the world of predictive maintenance and analytics to continue to measure average response time. And again, it's really improving on that field service engineer's performance and ensuring that you've got the right service levels for your customers. Ultimately, very, very important. So, Sean, I'd love for you to go ahead and wrap up the blueprint for our audience today and really get them to sort of understand how the technology, the processes, and the metrics come back together for the future of field service.
Great, thanks, Mickey. So, as Mickey said, we've really talked about a lot during today's webinar. And what we wanted to do is just summarize very quickly and concisely how this all works together and what are the process steps at a high level to go through implementing this. And the first is that we probably hammered home more than we needed to, understanding your processes and your metrics to guide both your individual service operations, but also your overall strategy from a what do I want to deliver to my customers? How do I want to differentiate myself in the marketplace? And what are my objectives now and in the future that I want to deliver upon? And once I know that, what do I need and what is available to me to enable my field service excellence? And what are those critical capabilities that I need to create a differentiated field service program? And those capabilities could be different forms of analytics. It could be different types of technology from a device connectivity through an analysis perspective. And it also could be what technologies do I need to provide to my field service technicians, to my internal field service professionals to ensure I'm able to operate at the highest level possible. The best saying that I've heard for this, and I can't take credit for this, is rules before tools. Understand what you need and what you want to do before you go out and begin buying tools. And while my trips to the very large big box hardware retailers probably wouldn't like that particular saying because I tend to overspend on that stuff, it's a good way to go about looking at what do I absolutely need to drive the outcomes that I want in my field service program. Then lastly, how can I turn those capabilities? How can I turn what I can deliver into differentiated promises that allow me to monetize this program that I have running, that I'm moving towards in the future to ensure I'm able to attract more customers, build a moat that's wider and deeper around the customers that I do have, and increase my margin at the same time. And that's the overall high-level viewpoint of everything that we covered today, from metrics to IoT connectivity to the different types of analytics. They all summarize into what do I want to promise to my customer and how well can I deliver those promises to my customer. So with that, we're going to begin taking questions now, as well as push out a final question to you. We have about 15 minutes before the end of the webinar, so please feel free to send in as many as you'd like.
Perfect. Well, Sean, Mickey, thank you both. We're heading into the Q&A session now. First, there is a new poll on your screen asking how you might like to be contacted after this event. There are 5 options there. Be sure to select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as many as you'd like. Let us know if you'd like to better understand how to leverage the right field service metrics, see a demonstration of the ServiceMax field service application, obtain insight on device connectivity, see a demonstration of an IoT-enabled predictive maintenance solution, or learn more about upcoming events. We can now get to the questions. And Sean, this first one is long, but it's for you, and I've pasted it on the left here. It reads, IoT is the way to go forward, but there is a need for standardization of interfaces so that it becomes easy to integrate, or is there a need? I'm facing this problem in the workshop equipment industry where each supplier has equipment having its own interface. Hence, it's becoming very difficult to integrate. Can ServiceMax help in standardizing these IoT interfaces across suppliers, across equipment types? So I guess ServiceMax or Software AG.
Mickey, do you mind if I take that particular question?
Oh, go right ahead.
All right. So it's a great question, and I have some really, really bad news. And I had a discussion about this with an analyst just about a month ago now. And the fact of the matter is, even though there's some really, really large companies in the marketplace that are trying to push for standardization across a couple of different protocols, companies typically make money by innovating and providing new protocols, new ways to go about doing business. So the issue that I see it is that there isn't going to be a standard interface for quite a while being years, probably 5, 7, 10 years before this interface becomes perfected. In the meantime, the way to resolve this particular issue is to have a messaging platform that's scalable and flexible enough to allow you to interface with a wide variety of different types of services and sensors and interfaces. And that's from my perspective, the best way to go about resolving that particular issue. And while I don't want to go down the very long and drawn out technical path, because everyone will be put to sleep along those lines, I do ask that the person asking that particular question, please feel free to send me a mail, and I'll get back to you with some very specific technical ways to go about ensuring that you have that scalable, flexible messaging, so that when you come across new standards, you're able to quickly and easily adopt to them and bring them into your network.
All right, perfect. So let's move on to our next question here. And by the way, Sean's email address is on the screen right there. So if you are the questioner, go ahead and copy that into your email and send it off to Sean. So Mickey, let's bring you in here with this next question. It asks, does ServiceMax allow users to measure other metrics like utilization?
That's a great question. Yes, we absolutely do. And we actually have a full metrics engine. Now we call it our service performance metrics. And what that does, it's essentially taking a ton of different measurements, like the ones that we reviewed today. You can measure response times, you can measure utilization, you can measure contract uptime. We have about 8 different metrics today that can all be measured from the processes that you run within ServiceMax. All of that data is input back into tables that's easily utilized through our report builders. So even business users can get in there and report on these metrics, and they can be collected over time. And it's run like an engine, essentially, that collects these metrics over time so that you can time series and see your improvements in the performance. So it's a great question.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. Sean, back to you for this. How do you know if an electronic calibration message didn't resolve the issue?
Another great question, and the simplest way to do that is to continue looking at patterns. And what I mean by that is earlier in the webinar we talked about automatic pattern detection, as well as the ability to automatically identify patterns that are unexpected. And that gives you the ability to send to your analytic engine, hey, I've kicked off this calibration message. And the engine then looks at your slow data, which is what's expected to occur. So I should see this type of performance out of this particular piece of equipment after that message. And if I don't see it, I then understand that the pattern that's occurring is different from my expected or previously learned pattern. And I can quickly trigger another alert to say, hey, this isn't resolving the issue. The second way to go about leveraging that pattern is for that condition monitoring tool to monitor the condition outcomes of your predictive analytics engine, which is basically your predictive analytics tool not extending the remaining useful life of that particular component or of that particular piece of equipment. And when that occurs, again, an alert that triggers an action that states this calibration didn't resolve the issue, dispatch technician, is what occurs after that particular detection is done.
Very good. All right. Moving right along, Mickey, back to you for this. What kinds of capabilities does ServiceMax have for managing a connected installed base?
So we actually have a lot of capabilities for install base management. So just to kind of give the audience an idea for what we do with your install base, we allow for some good capabilities around allowing you to see a full bill of materials associated with your as-serviced products. So that can be done at a serialized level, essentially. So if you're out there and you're really keeping a good track of what parts go in and out of products out there in the world that are going to live for a long time, it really goes a long way to understanding what opportunities you have out there in the world. For connected devices, we actually do connect to IoT platforms such as Software AG. They can bring in that monitoring information. You can track it within our interfaces. On our mobile devices, we have an install base application that allows for some very interesting ways to go about looking at complex install base sites. So where you're out, say, at a hospital and you've got tons of equipment on different floors, you can easily drill into where the equipment is. If you have to, say, go out there and touch many different types of equipment in any one visit, it allows for ease of access straight from a work order to drop you in to look at all the installed products that you have with all of their information associated to it, whether it's coming in via IoT or not. And then it also allows you to go ahead and hook up to third-party applications for diagnostics, and then that real-time monitoring as well. So we do have a lot of great capabilities, and we're starting to continue to build those out.
Okay. And I think we have time for a final question. And so, Sean, I'll put it to you here. How does Software AG work with ServiceMax field application?
So specifically, and I'll give a fairly technical answer to this, Software AG has a integration heritage, and one of the tools in that heritage is what's called a Cloud Streams adapter. That Cloud Streams adapter has been enabled so that a mediocre programmer can connect in real time to the ServiceMax platform in about 2 hours worth of work. And it's a bi-directional adapter that allows for Software AG technology to push data into the ServiceMax platform from what are we predicting that's going to go wrong? What's the contextual data around what's going to go wrong, or what the remaining useful life of a particular piece of equipment has on it, as well as what actions have been previously taken, such as the electronic calibration message, and then be able to also view and monitor the results of that action, so that you can understand the effectiveness of the repair, understand and provide additional information to the technician or other internal resources if an escalation needs to occur. And that all centers on the fact that, again, it's a bi-directional, two-way connection of data sharing that occurs in real time.
All right. Well, we are going to leave it there. Sean, Mickey, thank you both for being with us today. To everyone who's watching, you could have been in many places this past hour. We appreciate that you chose to be here with us. So that is it. This concludes our ServiceMax and Software AG webinar. Have a great day, everyone. And with that, we are done.